On the night of my 65th birthday, my entire family stood up and walked out. 10 minutes in. No warning. No hesitation. Just the sound of chairs scraping, coats being pulled on, and my sister's sharp voice slicing the air. "We've got better things to do." The door slammed behind them, leaving me staring at the empty chairs, the untouched food, the sagging streamers. My heart pounded in my ears. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it, if maybe I'd wake up and find the living room still full, laughter bouncing off the walls. But no. The silence was real. The humiliation was real. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't chase after them. I did something else. And the very next day, they were the ones calling me in a panic. Here's the truth. That birthday had been marked on my calendar for months. Not because I cared about turning 65. I've never been big on birthdays. But because it was supposed to be the first time in years my whole family would gather under one roof. My children, my grandchildren, my siblings, even my parents. I'd pictured the noise, the chatter, the clinking of glasses. I'd imagined blowing out the candles surrounded by the people I'd spent a lifetime loving, caring for, sacrificing for. Instead, I got 10 minutes of polite smiles and half-hearted small talk before the knives came out. But if you think their walkout was sudden, you'd be wrong. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was decades in the making, and on that night, in that humiliating moment, I finally saw it for what the day had started with such hope. I'd been up since dawn, fussing over the details like it was my first time throwing a party instead of my 65th. The dining table was dressed in a white cloth, the edges a little frayed but neat, covered with plates of food I'd spent 2 days preparing: roast chicken, fresh bread rolls, potato salad, fruit platters, and the cake. A towering chocolate sponge I'd baked myself, frosted twice when the first layer collapsed under its own weight. I told myself it didn't have to be perfect. It just had to feel like home. The living room was strung with ribbons in gold and silver, balloons drifting lazily against the ceiling. On the wall hung a banner my granddaughter had made, carefully painted letters spelling, "Happy Birthday, Grandma." The paint had smudged in places, her little fingerprints stamped around the edges like accidental signatures. To me, it was the most beautiful decoration in the room. When the doorbell rang, my heart skipped. "They're here." I opened the door with a smile that felt too big for my face. In walked my eldest daughter, her husband trailing behind, their teenage boys glued to their phones. My sister followed, heels clicking against the floor, her 3 children in tow. Then my parents shuffled in, stiff-backed, scanning the house as if inspecting it for flaws. "Happy birthday," I said brightly, hugging each one in turn. My mother's gaze skimmed the table. "Oh, you cooked," she remarked, her tone balanced on the knife's edge between approval and disappointment. My sister let her eyes wander over the room, lips twitching. "Cozy," she said at last. A word that can mean warm or cramped. I knew which one she meant. Still, I smiled. I told myself, it's fine. They came. That's what matters. For about 10 minutes, I believed it. The chairs scraped, the low buzz of conversation, barely alive. My grandchildren whispered among themselves, snickering, one of them pointing at the balloons like they were a joke. My sister smirked, not even bothering to hide it. My father cleared his throat with that familiar sound that always meant disapproval. I poured drinks, trying to keep things alive. "Help yourselves," I said, my voice a little too cheerful, hands trembling just enough that I hoped no one noticed. No one moved. Not a single plate shifted. The air grew heavy. My mother leaned close to my sister and, in a voice just loud enough for me to hear, asked, "Are we still going later?" My sister gave a small nod, like it was all already decided. I caught it. And worse, I caught my granddaughter catching it too. Her face froze, her hands tightening around the banner she'd worked so hard on. I saw the confusion cloud her eyes, the way her smile faltered. And then, like a rehearsed performance, my mother stood. She smoothed her jacket, adjusted her scarf, and with a tone so casual it cut sharper than any scream, she said, "We've got better things to do." My sister rose instantly, her children springing up as if on cue. "Come on," she said lightly. "We shouldn't keep people waiting." One of her kids muttered, "Told you this would be boring." Laughter snickered through their ranks. Chairs scraped, coats swung over shoulders, and before I could blink, the door slammed shut. Silence collapsed over the house. The balloons seemed to droop lower, the cake sitting untouched like an insult at the center of the table. My granddaughter sat frozen in her chair, her little hands twisted together, eyes wide. Finally, her voice cracked, a whisper cutting through the silence. "Grandma, did I do something wrong?" It broke me. I wanted to tell her no, to tell her she'd done nothing wrong, that she was perfect just the way she was. And I did. I knelt down beside her chair, forced a smile, and whispered, "Of course not, sweetheart." You didn't do a single thing wrong. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew she didn't believe me. She kept staring at the door, waiting for it to swing open, waiting for them to come back. They didn't. And as I sat there, fury rising like a tide inside me, I realized something. This wasn't sudden. It wasn't random. It wasn't even about the party. It was decades in the making. See, I grew up 2 years behind my sister Angela. 2 years isn't much on paper, but when you're a child, it may as well be a lifetime. She was the golden child, the bubbly one, the one who could walk into a room and make everyone light up. Pretty, charming, magnetic. Everyone adored her. And then there was me. The quieter one, the bookish one, the one who always came second. While Angela was sneaking out to parties, I was sneaking into libraries. While she was learning how to flirt and apply makeup, I was memorizing math equations and fixing old radios. Guess who the family preferred? The soundtrack of my childhood was, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" I laughed it off, of course. Dry humor was my shield. "Sure," I'd say. "Let me just grow 6 inches and become blonde overnight." They'd roll their eyes. I'd roll mine harder. And the gap only grew. By the time we were teenagers, the roles were cemented. Angela sparkled. I endured. But here's the thing about being overlooked. You learn to work. I met Thomas at a conference that could have bored the paint off the walls. Bad coffee, worse suits, endless PowerPoints. He wasn't the kind of man who turned heads when he walked into a room. But when he sat next to me and cracked a sarcastic comment about the speaker's monotone voice, I laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that bursts out before you can stop it. He wasn't rich. He wasn't charming in the polished way Angela's boyfriends always were. But he was like me. Hungry. Restless. Always looking at the world like it could be built into something better. By the end of that weekend, I knew Thomas wasn't just someone I liked. He was someone I could build with. And build we did. We started from nothing. Nights of eating ramen at the kitchen counter, splitting bills down to the last penny, working on ideas that failed 10 times before one stuck. His business grew. Mine did too. Slowly. Painfully. But always forward. When we finally tasted success, it wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. It was sweat, stubbornness, and sacrifice. But ask my family, and they'll tell you a different story. She got lucky. She married a rich man. All of this, it's because of Thomas. Funny, isn't it? When we were broke, I was foolish for wasting my time. But when we succeeded, suddenly none of it was mine. And yet, despite the dismissal, despite the twisted narrative, I kept giving. At first it was little things, a loan for a bill here, a contribution to a family trip there. I told myself it was normal, That's what family does. But family has a way of testing limits. And mine? They didn't just test, they took. It started small. A bill here, a little help there. Nothing outrageous. And I wanted to help. Maybe, deep down, I thought that if I gave enough, they'd finally see me the way they saw Angela, with admiration, with pride, with warmth. But entitlement doesn't shrink when you feed it. It grows. Soon, it wasn't just occasional help, it was expectations. My parents' mortgage? I covered the top-ups, so casually requested they started to feel like monthly subscriptions. Family vacations? Booked under my name, paid with my card, while the others acted like it was some invisible hand footing the bill. Angela's children's birthdays became miniature spectacles, venues rented, entertainers hired, gift mountains stacked to the ceiling, and every year the quiet assumption hung in the air. Of course you'll cover it. You can afford it. Restaurant dinners were the same. The check would arrive, linger on the table, then, like clockwork, slide toward me. No one said it out loud, but their silence was louder than any words. You know what to do. At first I told myself it was fine, that this was just what families did, that belonging, even if bought, was still belonging. But slowly I began to realize the truth. My worth to them wasn't in who I was. It wasn't in the decades of work I had poured into building something from nothing. It was in what I could give. And every time I said yes, I wasn't buying love. I was renting it. Until Lily came along, and that's when everything changed. When Lily was born, I thought maybe things would finally be different. Maybe being a grandmother and an aunt would soften them, bring out some warmth I had never seen. And for a little while I convinced myself it had. Smiles, cooing, the occasional compliment. But children have a way of exposing truths adults like to hide. It started with the little digs. Such a plain dress. Angela's kids always looked so polished. Maybe she should try dance classes. Angela's Tori is already the star of her group. She's shy, isn't she? Not like the others. The comparisons came sharp and constant, just like when I was a child. Only this time, it wasn't me on the receiving end. It was Lily. And I saw it in her eyes. The same confusion, the same shrinking inside herself that I had felt decades ago. Every whispered remark, every smirk, every dismissive comment chipped away at her confidence. That's when it hit me. The cycle was repeating. Everything they had done to me, they were starting to do to her, and I couldn't let that happen. So when she asked me, months before my birthday, if we could celebrate together in a small way, just us, Grandma, no entertainers, no big stuff, just family, I said yes. No circus, no catering, no grand performance. Just us, streamers, homemade food, a crooked banner, and a cake baked with love. But in the back of my mind, I knew this was a test. Not just for them, for me. Would they show up if there was nothing in it for them? Would they love us without the glitter, without the spectacle, without the money? 10 minutes in, I had my answer. That night, after everyone had gone, the house felt colder than I'd ever known it. The balloons sagged in the corners, the untouched cake sat like an accusation in the middle of the table. And upstairs, Lily lay stiff in her bed, staring at the ceiling, whispering the same question over and over, "Grandma, did I do something wrong?" Every time I answered the same, "No, sweetheart." You did nothing wrong, but my words felt thin, brittle, because I knew she didn't believe me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't try to protect them. I didn't make excuses for them. I didn't soften the truth. I told her plainly, they left because they didn't get what they wanted. That's not love. That's not family. When she finally drifted off to sleep, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the streamers drooping across the wall. The silence pressed in on me. My whole life, I had been paying for the privilege of belonging, mortgage money for my parents, vacations Angela picked but I funded, over-the-top parties for her kids, always signed off by my bank account. And what did I get in return? A walkout. Something inside me hardened. The child in me still wanted their approval, yes, but the woman I had become was done. I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, shaky with habit and guilt. Then I began cutting ties, one click at a time. Cancel monthly mortgage transfer. Withdraw from the family trip fund. Delete Angela's reminder about hiring Tori's birthday entertainer. For years, I had been paying to belong. That night, I stopped paying, and the house suddenly felt lighter. By morning, the storm hit. The first message came from my mother. "Nancy, don't be dramatic, we'll talk later." As if walking out on my birthday, on Lily's birthday too, really, was nothing but a small misunderstanding. Then my father. "The mortgage is due. Just do the transfer." No greeting, no apology. Just a command. Angela's message landed last, and of course she went straight for guilt. "Tori's party is next week. You always pay for the entertainer. Don't let her down." I didn't answer. Not that day, not the next. By day 2, the tone had shifted. My mother again. "You're being selfish. After everything we've done for you." Angela. "Unbelievable. You think you're too good for us now?" My father. "Stop acting like a child. The family needs you." Their words felt familiar, like an old song I'd heard too many times. The same blame, the same twisting of stories, the same refusal to take responsibility. But something was different this time. I wasn't listening anymore. By day 3, the panic set in. My father wrote, "If we miss this mortgage payment, the bank will be on us. Don't ruin everything over a tantrum." Angela tried again. "Brandon's been looking forward to this trip for months. You can't ruin it for him." Finally, I broke the silence with one message, just one. "You walked out on Lily. Don't call me again." Then I blocked them all. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. Heavy with panic they didn't dare put into words. 2 weeks later, I threw another birthday party. Not for me this time. For Lily. But this one wasn't about balloons sagging in corners or a cake that sat untouched. This one wasn't about obligation or appearances. It was about joy. About showing her she was wanted. Her friends filled the house. Classmates, kids from the neighborhood, children who actually wanted to be there, not ones dragged along for show. The noise was chaos in the best way. Laughter loud enough to rattle the windows, shrieks from a scavenger hunt Thomas set up in the backyard, the clatter of little feet racing up and down the hallway. When Lily won the final clue, she threw her arms in the air like she'd conquered the world. Her smile lit the entire room. I stood there, watching her, and thought, this is what a birthday party looks like. This is what love looks like. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed nonstop on the counter. Preview texts lit the screen like fireworks. "We can't make the mortgage this month. The villa deposit is non-refundable. What are we supposed to do? You're destroying this family." I almost laughed. Almost? They thought humiliating me would break me. They thought I'd crawl back, wallet in hand, desperate to prove myself again. Instead, I was watching my granddaughter laugh so hard she nearly toppled over, surrounded by people who actually cared, and while they scrambled to hold together the house of cards I used to fund, I realized something. They weren't just losing me. They were losing the image of a family I had paid for all these years. When guilt failed, they turned to harassment. First came the letters. My mother's handwriting on floral stationery, the kind she always thought looked classy. But the words dripped poison. "Nancy, you're tearing this family apart. Don't punish us for one mistake. We raised you. You owe us." Classic mom. If passive aggression were an Olympic sport, she'd have more medals than Michael Phelps. Then came the emails. Angela didn't bother with subtlety. She went straight for the jugular. You're selfish. Everything you have came from Thomas. Don't pretend otherwise. You'd be nothing without him. Ah, yes, the old narrative. My success wasn't mine. Convenient, isn't it? When we were broke, I was stupid for wasting my time. But when we thrived, it was all Thomas. When insults didn't work, they changed tactics. They went public. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with Facebook messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Your mom says you've abandoned them after everything they did for you. Of course. The family gossip machine. If lies were currency, they'd be billionaires. But gossip cuts both ways. Because soon enough, the truth slipped out. That they had walked out of my birthday. That they had left my granddaughter in tears because the party wasn't good enough for them. And sympathy started shifting. I didn't even have to spread the story. Relatives carried it for me, whispering from one branch of the family tree to another. One afternoon, Aunt Ruth, the eternal peacemaker, called me in a fury. Nancy, is it true? Did your mother really walk out of Lily's party? Yes, I said flatly. The silence on the other end was sharp. Then her voice dropped to a hiss. Unbelievable. Poor Lily. What kind of grandmother does that? And just like that, the narrative began to turn. It didn't take long for the cracks to spread. I heard it first through the grapevine, relatives whispering updates like it was the hottest drama on television. Apparently, my mother and Angela had a screaming match in the middle of a restaurant. My mother blamed Angela for pushing me too far. Angela snapped back that my parents were weak for relying on me. The shouting escalated until, according to one cousin, Angela even threw a wine glass, shattered right there on the floor while other diners stared. Classy. Meanwhile, Angela's kids weren't quiet either. Tori, the eldest, sulked to anyone who would listen. Why don't we have parties anymore? Why can't we go on vacation? Brandon complained that nothing was fun anymore. Joshua grumbled to a cousin. Aunt Nancy ruined everything. Their outrage was almost comical. They weren't upset about losing me. They were upset about losing what I funded. And every call I got from a relative carried the same undertone, half concerned, half gleeful. Nancy, they're falling apart without you. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But the lowest blow was still waiting. Because desperate people don't get better. They get sloppy. And when they couldn't guilt me, couldn't shame me, couldn't twist the story anymore, they went after Lily. It happened one afternoon after school. Lily walked through the front door, pale as paper, clutching an envelope in her small hands. "Grandma gave me this," she whispered. Her voice trembled like she already knew something was wrong. I snatched it from her fingers, a glittery card with balloons on the front, the kind you'd find in the bargain aisle. Inside, my mother's looping handwriting made my stomach twist. "Dear Lily, we love you very much. We only left your party because your mom ruined it. If she stops being difficult, we'll come back." Love, Grandma, and Grandpa. My vision went red. It was one thing to manipulate me, to twist stories, to spread lies, to paint me as the villain. But to drag Lily into it? To put the blame on her shoulders, to poison her against me? That crossed a line. Lily's eyes shimmered with tears. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Did you ruin it?" I dropped to my knees, gripping her shoulders. "No, absolutely not. They're lying because they want control. None of this is your fault, and it's not mine either." She nodded slowly, but I could see how deeply their words had cut her. How much she wanted to believe her grandparents, how confusing it must have felt. That night, after she fell asleep, I made a decision. Enough. By the end of the week, I had a no-contact order in place. Legally, they were barred from reaching out to Lily again. No letters, no calls, no manipulation. I didn't just slam the door. I welded it shut and threw away the key. They didn't take it well. The first sign came in the form of a voicemail from Angela. Her voice was shrill, practically a scream put into words. "You're poisoning Lily against us. You're cruel. You're destroying this family." Funny, because the last time I checked, they were the ones who walked out on her birthday. Then came another letter from my mother. Her script was shakier this time, but the manipulation was the same. "Nancy, you're overreacting. We just want to love Lily. Stop making her suffer." The irony nearly made me choke. Meanwhile, I heard from relatives that my parents had started asking around for loans. Extended cousins, old friends, anyone gullible enough to hand over cash. Word was they were months behind on the mortgage. Angela had to cancel her kids' big birthday bashes. The villa for the family trip was gone. The glossy facade they had paraded for years was cracking fast. But inside my home, things looked different. Lily stopped glancing at the door like she was waiting for someone to leave. She smiled more, laughed more, filled notebooks with drawings of sunshine and flowers instead of dark, empty pages. One night, after a long day of playing with her friends, she curled up beside me and whispered, "Grandma, this is the best day of my life." And for once, I didn't feel that old ache for approval. I didn't long for my mother's love or Angela's sisterhood. I had something better, something real. But just because I shut the door didn't mean they stopped clawing at it. Desperate people don't fade quietly. They unravel. The gossip didn't stop. It only got louder. Aunt Ruth called again, her voice half horrified, half gleeful. "Nancy, your mother broke down at a church luncheon, full-on sobbing about how you've ruined everything." Angela stormed out, called her pathetic. Your father tried to smooth things over, but they ended up shouting too. Right there, in front of everyone. They weren't just cracking behind closed doors anymore. They were unraveling in public. The polished image they'd worked decades to maintain was slipping away, one screaming match at a time. Angela, once the golden child, was humiliated. No more lavish vacations to flaunt online. No extravagant birthday parties for her kids to brag about. Her friends whispered. Her children sulked, loud and entitled, pointing fingers at me even though I hadn't given them a dime in over a year. Meanwhile, my parents faced the brutal consequences of years of dependence. No cushion, no safety net. Just bills piling up and dignity slipping away. And me? I didn't have to lift a finger. The child in me still ached, of course, still wished, in some dark corner of my heart, that they'd look at me with pride instead of disappointment. That they'd see me, really see me. But every time I remembered Lily's face holding that cruel letter, her voice cracking as she asked if I ruined her birthday, the ache hardened into resolve. Because if that's what family looks like, then I want no part of it. Fast forward 1 year. My parents don't live in their house anymore. They lost it. Now they're crammed into a tiny apartment, the kind they used to laugh at when we drove past. And they're still fighting louder than ever, blame ricocheting off the walls like shrapnel. Angela's life is no better. No more villas, no more glittering birthday parties. Her kids complain nonstop. Tori threw a tantrum because her party this year was just pizza and a grocery store cake. Brandon whines that we never do anything fun. Joshua mutters to cousins, "Aunt Nancy ruined everything," which is hilarious because I haven't given them a dime in over a year. And the gossip? Oh, it's brutal. I hear from relatives all the time. Angela screaming at my mother in public, my father walking out of arguments. The perfect little family they love to parade around, shattered. Meanwhile, Lily is thriving. She isn't the shy, unsure little girl from that first party anymore. She's louder, brighter, bolder. She knows without a doubt who really loves her and who doesn't. She still calls that second party, the one with her friends, the one filled with laughter, the best day ever. As for me and Thomas, we opened a second office in Canada. Business is solid. Life is quieter. And without the constant drain of funding my so-called family, I finally have the energy to focus on what actually matters. Sometimes distant relatives call me and whisper that maybe it's time to make peace. But here's the truth. Peace with people who would walk out on a child isn't peace at all. It's surrender. So, what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments.